What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to METS Central. This is a post-game show number 35, where the New York Mets once again lose just another frustrating kick in the balls game where once again the same problems that we've kept bringing up on the podcast, the problems that I talked about and brought up on the post-game show for the first game, once again it comes back to bite them in the ass. And listen, I've been the first one on here to say, listen, stay patient. Things going to turn. They're going to get better. Runners in scoring position, they're going to start hitting for it. They're going to start bringing runners in. And listen, I get it that it's only game 35, but it's really getting to the point now where it's like there is real concern where it's like, when are the Mets going to start getting those big hits to drive in runners when they're in scoring position? Because once again, this is a series where that costed them. And you know what? Because I was just thinking to myself, right? This was such a carbon copy of the last series that we just had against Diamondbacks in at Citi Field, where the first game everything's clicking, the pitching was good, the bullpen was fine, the bats, the bats are coming through, they're bringing in guys with they're bringing in guys when they're on base, when they're in scoring position, and they end up winning big by a couple runs. And then these last two games are just pretty much, like I said, carbon copy the last two games in Arizona, where the pitching necessarily wasn't great, but the Mets had plenty of opportunities where they had guys on base, guys in scoring position, and once again, they could not get the big hit to either tie the game or take the lead. And and like I said, we saw this today in both games. Now, listen, was there a little bit of unluckiness today? Yes, but however, when like listen, don't get me wrong. There was a bit of a bit of unluckiness from this team, this second game in particular, because you have the Juan Soto, where he was robbed of the home run by Victor Scott at dead center, where he went up and just caught the ball. The Mets, I believe, had like 10 balls, where they hit it, where the exit velo was 100 miles an hour and over. However, you can only give them the benefit of the doubt so much when this is now becoming a recurring issue almost every single game. I mean, just take a look at this stat by Tim Healy posted this on Twitter after the game on the day today. So combining both games, the Mets today went 6 for 26, a 231 batting average with runners in scoring position. 22 men left on base. That is, I'm sorry, it's inexcusable. That those type of numbers for this type of lineup, for the amount of money that's put into this team and this lineup, it is not good enough. And once again, this is like something we were saying where, okay, like the pitching has been really good so far, but there is going to be games where the pitching is average to mediocre, and you have to hit your way to wins. And today we'll get into this, but Tyler McGill was not good today. He was not sharp. He ended up giving away 4 runs today. He didn't have his best stuff. And this is the time when, okay, you say when sorry guys, but I'm just really frustrated right now. But these are the type of games where it's like the lineup has to go and the guys hitting have to say, okay, listen, our starters, they're not having the best of game today. Let's step up. Let's come through. Let's give them a nice cushion to work with, and let's go out there and win a ball game against a team that they should beat. Like, no offense to the St. Louis Cardinals, but the Cardinals are not a good team. They're 15 and 19. A lot of people, including me, picked them to finish dead last in the NL Central this year. Now, listen, they have good guys here and there. Obviously, I mean that whole roster is obviously not filled with garbage, but this is still a team that you should be beating. The Mets just swept them 2 weeks ago at Citi Field in a 4-game sweep, and then they come near St. Louis and they fall flat on their face and they play like garbage. It's unacceptable. And listen, I get it. It's baseball. It's a long season. It's 162 games. You're not going to win every game. You're not going to win every series. but you have to win the series against these bad teams like the Cardinals. Because look, now you're headed to Arizona for a 3-game set. That's a team in Arizona in the Diamondbacks that just took 2 out of 3 from the Mets at Citi Field. That's not going to be an easy series. Like again, the Mets could easily go in there and lose 2 out of 3 again, and then boom, there you go. Now you just lost 3 games. Sorry, you just lost 3 series on the trot. It's not good enough. It's something has to give. Something has to give. Whether it's Eric Chavez being let go, and and guys in the comment section, me and Evan have been wanting Eric Chavez to be fired for a long time now because we know that the overall hitting approach, his coaching abilities is not good. So, but then again, with the record, even though I would hope David Stearns will look past the record and just overall look at the data, look at the facts, look at the results, and say, okay, this is not a sustainable way to play baseball. We need to make a change. Because look, the Texas Rangers today, actually during the Mets game, they fired their hitting coach. Yes, they're under 500, but still, the record should not blind you from making necessary changes because we've seen it now for years now under Eric Chavez. Eric Chavez was hired in 2022. It's not like he was just brought in this year or last year. He's not a David Stearns hire. Billy Epler was the guy that brought him in from the Yankees. So I don't get it. Maybe Chavez is just a nice guy. Maybe he's got dirt on David Stearns. I have no idea. But it's like it's just a repeated process where it's the same thing over and over and over with an Eric Chavez offense. It's like they can get guys on base. Like that's not the problem. The Mets have plenty of times this year and plenty of times in the last 2 series have gotten guys on base, but they're just not able to execute and get that big hit or that walk or hell, even a sacrifice fly to tie the game or take the lead. It's just overall, it's really frustrating. And then again, when your top guys, they don't have it today, like especially in the second game, when Lindor's not getting that big hit, Soto in reality did get the big hit, but he got robbed. Like that's just you can't do anything about that. That's just bad luck and a great play by Victor Scott. Even though I was very pissed off at him for making that play, but I got to tip my hat to him. I mean, that was a great fucking play that he made. When Pete Alonso's not doing anything, when Brandon Nimmo's not doing anything, when Vientos is not doing anything with guys on base, it's very hard to win a ball game like that. It just is. But yeah. Anyway, let's get into the overall the post game recap now. So yeah, it was Tyler McGill on the mound for the Mets, obviously. AJ Palante started the game for the St. Louis Cardinals. So Francisco Lindor obviously leads off. He grounds out to Brendan Donovan. Juan Soto then singles. Pete Alonso then grounds into an inning-ending double play. Bottom of the first, quick 1-2-3 inning by Tyler McGill as Lars Nootbaar flies out, Mason Wynn lines out, and then Brendan Donovan lines out. Top of the second, Mark Vientos leads off with a single. Brandon Nimmo then grounds into a double play. Stalling Marte singles. Marte then ends up stealing second base. Francisco Alvarez walks, but Luis Angel Acuna would ground out to end the inning. Bottom of the second, Nolan Arenado would lead off the inning with a single. Wilson Contreras would then line out. Alec Burleson would then hit a 2-run shot. McGill gave him a up and in fastball, and Burleson just turned on it. So 2-0 Cardinals there. Pozo then pops out, and then Jordan Walker gets called out on strikes to end the inning. Top of the third, Tyrone Taylor singles, Lindor singles. Francisco Lindor grounds into a force out, so Lindor advances to third base, and Soto is at first base. Then Pete Alonso singles to bring in Francisco Lindor. Mark Vientos walks. Brandon Nimmo strikes out swinging. Stalling Marte then comes through with a big-time single as he brings in 2 runners to put the Mets up 3-2. Francisco Alvarez, who, didn't play the first game of the series but had a big game in the first game of the series, he comes through again with the RBI single, makes it 4-2 Mets, and then Acuna grounds out to end the inning. Bottom of the third, McGill would then get into some trouble here as Victor Scott would strike out. Lars Nootbaar would walk. Mason Wynn would then walk. Brendan Donovan then grounds out. Nolan Arenado with a single. Then Wilson Contreras singles. When Arenado singled, he made it 4-3, and then when Wilson Contreras singled, he ends up tying the game at 4. McGill gets out of it by getting Alec Burleson to ground out. Then we get to the top of the fourth, and pretty much this is kind of where the Mets lost the game because you have Tyrone Taylor who comes up. He singles to start off the inning. Francisco Lindor walks. Then Juan Soto obviously hits a deep fly ball to center field, and Scott just goes up there, makes the nice grab, and robs Juan Soto of what should be a three-run shot to put the Mets up 7-4. But innings not over there. The Mets still have a chance, to go up there, regroup, and bring in more runs. Lindor then steals second base. Pete Alonso then walks. So you got bases loaded. And then Mark Vientos, just with a horrible at bat, gets called out on strikes. And then Brandon Nimmo, a little unlucky here, hits the ball hard into right field and flies out. But before overall we just move on with the game, and we're going to talk about this more in the podcast, but Mark Vientos with runners in scoring position is a real problem right now, because there is a total difference right now between when you watch and analyze Vientos' game and at bats when there's guys on base and when there aren't guys on base. Because it looks like right now he's two totally different hitters. It seems like when there's no one on base, Vientos goes up there, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected, he's not chasing anything, he's getting on base, hitting the ball hard, and then it just seems like, and I don't know what it is, if this is just a lack of preparation, but it just seems like every time Vientos goes up there with guys on base, it seems like he's getting tight. He's gripping the bat extra hard. I don't know if he's nervous or something, but it's like, again, it's like two totally different players up there when its bases are empty, and then you have like a bases loaded situation or men out second and third. Because we've seen it plenty of times so far, and we saw plenty of times in the last series as well. I mean, if you guys recall back to the second game in Arizona, back in the second game of the Arizona series at Citi Field, Vientos, when there was no one on base, hits what's it called? A home run for one run. Sorry about that, guys. So obviously he hits the solo home run. That's what I was looking for. He hits the solo home run, but then later in the game, when it was later in the game, and then guys were on base, and then the Mets needed that big time extra base hit or even a sacrifice fly to bring in the tying run or the go ahead run. Again, Vientos would go up there, he would chase, he would strike out, he wouldn't hit anything to the outfield, and it's just like, something's got to give with Vientos, because don't get me wrong, Vientos has definitely looked a lot better since the start of the year, but this is the reason why we were excited about Mark Vientos last year, and this was a big reason why the Mets went far last year, because Vientos, it seemed like every time he was up there with guys on base, he would go up there and get that big time extra base hit. He is not doing that currently, and it's very frustrating because the Mets need Vientos, especially, like I said, when Lindor's not having a great game, when Pete's not having a great game, when Soto's not producing. You need, like I said, you need Nimmo and Vientos, those two guys in the 4 and the 5 hole. You need those guys to step up and produce. And currently, like, sure, okay, Nimmo's looked a little bit better, but overall, still, his games haven't been great. It's just like something's got to give. And then obviously, we talked about it in the first game recap with Winker leaving the game, and it looks like he's going on the IL because he had an MRI done. And then at least so far I didn't check, but Starling Marte came out of the game. So now is he injured? So because now the Mets don't have a DH. And it's just like, the Mets already have plenty of injuries to their bullpen. Obviously, they did get Denzel Nunez back, but there is injuries to the bullpen. Now you might have two of your DHs out. I mean, it's like, with the poor play right now, and now you have some guys dropping like flies. And listen, I get we get on Marte for being old and being washed, but I'll give him credit today. He played a great game, but it's like overall you're losing bodies. So I don't know what the corresponding move is going to be. And first of all, I mean, I don't even know if Marte is like going on the IL. Like I said, I still haven't seen anything on that. But it's like, if he does, what's the corresponding move? Are the Mets not going to go out there and sign somebody? Are they going to go out and make an under the radar trade? Do they maybe bring up a guy in Drew Gilbert who has been currently raking at AAA? Like, I have no idea right now. I have no idea. But anyway. Yeah, so the Mets obviously don't come through there. Then bottom of the fourth, Yohel Pozo lines out to Lindor. Jordan Walker then strikes out. Victor Scott then walks, and then Lars Nootbaar grounds out to end the inning. Then top of the fifth, Jose Barrera comes in to replace Mason Wynn. Stalling Marte grounds out. Francisco Alvarez walks. Luis Angel Acuna strikes out. Tyrone Taylor would be hit by a pitch, but then Lindor would strike out to end the inning. Bottom of the fifth, like as I said, Jose Azocar would come in to replace Stalling Marte in right field. McGill gets Barrera to strike out. He hits Brendan Donovan with a pitch, but then gets back-to-back strikeouts with Nolan Arenado and Wilson Contreras. So a very nice bounce-back fifth inning from Tyler McGill there. And ultimately, that would be the end of his night. And overall, like I said, with McGill at the top, wasn't great, but did settle down as the game went on. But overall, you would like to see better. Now, here's the thing with McGill, right? And even like we talked about it last time, well, not last podcast, but 2 podcasts ago, after the National Series, like and I said before, I was so close to buying fully in on McGill. But like I said, the big thing that was holding me back from committing to that was, as we've seen, through the last couple of years, McGill always starts the season strong. He's always good in March. He's always good in April. But once the schedule flips to May, you start to see the regression of Tyler McGill. Now, look, it was not a great start today. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I really do, because I think there is a good pitcher in there. But when we've seen this play out before like this, I'm very skeptical to give a guy like McGill the benefit of the doubt. Now, look, maybe the fact that, the game, because he was supposed to pitch yesterday in the second game of the series, maybe the fact that, his start was pushed back in the day, maybe he got thrown off by that, because as we know, pitchers are creatures of habit. They live and die by their routines, by their systems. So maybe he was thrown off by that. And look, if McGill rebounds from this and, his next 4 or 5 starts, he's really good, I'll be able to put my hands up and say, okay, cool. It was just a bad start. Because listen, at the end of the day, every pitcher's going to have a bad start here and there. It happens. It's just, as I said with McGill, where we've seen this problem with him over, his short tenure so far as a major leaguer. So, listen, I don't like what I saw today from McGill, but let's just see what happens in his next couple starts. Because, I mean, as you broke it down, like, again, I thought his fastball's all right, but the problem with McGill and the thing that's bothered him over his last couple years as a major leaguer was when he doesn't have the secondary stuff, he looks like a very average pitcher. And again, his sinker wasn't great today. His slider wasn't great today. His changeup wasn't good today. I mean, his curveball is okay, but overall, it's not the same swing and miss stuff that, we saw from Tyler McGill over his last couple starts, especially in Washington, and then the one he had against the Phillies. It's the Phillies against Citi Field. Because listen, like I said, with the fastball, 97.4 miles an hour he topped out at. Got 11 swings and 4 whiffs on that. But like I said, it's the breaking stuff, because he only got 11 swings, 2 whiffs on the sinker, and then only got 6 swings and 2 whiffs on the slider. So, and like I said, with the final pitch line as I have up here, sorry guys, 5 innings pitched, 4 runs, 4 hits, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, 1 home run, and then, obviously it raises his ERA up to 2.50. So not the worst, but McGill definitely has to be better. All right, then anyway, let's get back to the post game recap, guys. So top of the 6th, Juan Soto flies out, Pete Alonso grounds out, Mark Piento singles, and then Brandon Donovan grounds out. Then bottom of the 6th, Max Kranick comes in to replace Tyler McGill. He'd get Burleson to strike out. Pozo would single. Jordan Walker would fly out. Victor Scott would double to give the Cardinals a 5-4 lead. And then Lars Nootbaar would ground out to end the inning. Top of the 7th, 1-2-3 inning for the Mets. Jose Azocar grounds out. Alvarez flies out, and then Luis Angel Acuna strikes out. Bottom of the 7th, Stanek comes in to replace Max Kranick. A very good bounce back outing from Stanek here as he gets Barrera to pop out. Brendan Donovan singles, Nolan Arenado singles. Wilson Contreras strikes out, but is able to get the first base on a drop called strike. And then Alec Burleson strikes out. He flies out to end the inning. Top of the 8th, again, 1-2-3 inning for the Mets. Taylor pops out, Lindor lines out, and then Juan Soto pops out to end the inning. A really good, unfortunate play that Nolan Arenado just made there. And listen, that's why at the end of the day, he's a Gold Glove, Platinum Glove winner, because he makes plays like that, even though it's very frustrating from our point of view. But I guess you just got to tip your cap there to him. Edwin Diaz then comes in to replace Ryan Stanek. First time we've seen Diaz come in within a week. And and again, like Evan obviously brought this up in the podcast, the last one he did, but obviously we've been criticizing Mendy for his bullpen usage, but it's just it's odd when it's like there were so many very similar situations, like I said, between this series and the Diamondback series at Citi Field, and Mendy totally used his bullpen like the totally opposite way, and it's like, so why did you just not use your top relievers in the Diamondbacks series? Like it just it makes no sense because I forgot to bring it up. Um, he used Reed Garrett in the first game in a one-run game. So why was Reed Garrett not utilized in that second game, only down by 1 run? Why are you pushing a guy like Chris Davinsky to go 2 innings? Edwin Diaz used again in a game where you're down by 1 run. Again, why are you pushing Chris Davinsky in a one-run game against the Diamondbacks? Like it just I don't get it. Listen, I still like Mendoza as a manager, but his bullpen usage and his overall strategy of how to use pitchers, it's confusing me. Now, look, maybe I'm not seeing the full picture. Maybe I'm not seeing the data that obviously that they have. It's just to me, it's odd, at least from my perspective. But as I said, then obviously Edwin Diaz comes in, gets Pozo singles, Jordan Walker lines out, Victor Scott strikes out, Newbar doubles, but gets Jose Barrero to ground out to get out of that inning. And then top of the ninth, Pete Alonso strikes out, Vientos grounds out, and then Brandon Nimmo flies out to left field at the end of the inning. So again, just another unacceptable performance from the Mets where again, their biggest bugaboo is they can't bring in the guys with that are in scoring position, and ultimately that costs them. And then the other thing is listen, like credit to credit to McGreevy, who came out of the bullpen and relieved AG Palante after he was struggling. But for a guy, and they said on the broadcast today, for a guy who was making his first appearance this year in the major leagues, like the fact that you let him go 5 2/3 inning, 1 hit, no runs, 1 walk, 5 Ks, and you allowed him to shut you down like that. Again, unacceptable. Unacceptable. It's not good enough. And listen, I still think this team is a very good team, but they got to figure shit out. They do. Because this type of play cannot continue. And like I've been saying, I know it's a long season. I know it is, but we have to start seeing the good habits being implemented into their game. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. But anyway, guys, before we get out of here, of course, I'll go through your guys' comments and then obviously we'll do that and then we'll wrap up. Two Cats, El Stingo, absolutely. Ray, sick and damn tired of watching pitchers throw tons of pitches in an inning and then not getting past 5 or 6 innings. McGill throwing 38 damn pitches in the third. Yeah, it killed him. And that's usually the thing that hurts Tyler McGill because he'll have innings where it's like it's 1-2-3, 1-2-3. He gets through them quick, and then he gets held up on that one inning, and then that overall just costs him, and then is the main reason why he can't go deeper into games. And we've seen it with our other pitchers this year. We've seen it with Clay Holmes with his earlier starts where he's cruising, he's grooving, but then he just gets that one inning where he just simply can't work, or he works out of it, but he has to work extra hard to get out of it and throws a lot of pitches. And then, like you said, it doesn't allow him to go deeper into games. But like I said, hopefully this was just a bad start for McGill and he'll bounce back next start. MJ edits should be beating teams like this. Absolutely. Two Cats. Washington might have broken. I hate to say, but all 6 losses since have been so paved. Yeah, listen, I don't think Washington. I don't think the Nationals broke the Mets. I just think they haven't been playing good baseball. Like, at least that's my opinion. Obviously, you guys are entitled to your own opinions, but for me, I personally don't agree with that. I just think that overall, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're shooting themselves in the foot, and they got to play better. Because really, I mean, again, and I brought this up in the first post game that we did today earlier. Look how many 1-run games the Mets have been losing. And like I said, listen, I get it. When you're a good team, you're going to be in a lot of close games, and you're going to end up losing a ton of close games. But eventually, here and there, you have to break through in one of these games and get that big hit. And they just haven't been having that. Phillies and Braves right there immediately. I mean, the Phillies are there. I know the Braves. I know the Braves lost last night to the Dodgers, obviously, and they're up 4-3 right now. with 2 outs. So it looks like they should secure that game and hold on. But listen, listen, I've been saying this, and Evan said this when when we did our post. I'm sorry, not our post. When we did our preseason predictions, the NL East is going to be tight. It's going to be tight throughout the whole season. Listen, could a team break away and just run away with the division? Sure, they could, but I just think that pretty much the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets, they're all going to stay pretty close to each other relatively, and the division is going to be decided on the last couple days of the regular season, in my opinion. Where's the pride of this team? I think they have pride. I just don't think they're playing well. Like I don't think it has anything to do with pride. They're just, like I said, they're not playing well. The Mets are extremely freaking fortunate. The Phillies are a few games behind, but not for long. If we keep playing like this, playing like we are, frustrating. I mean, yeah. Listen, the Phillies have a good team. They do. And if the Mets start dropping games, the Phillies obviously could be right there to pick the Mets off and reclaim first place in the division again. I mean, listen. At the end of the day, during the regular season, you're gonna have up and downs. Obviously, the Phillies just had a stretch where they didn't play very well. Obviously, they lost today to the Diamondbacks, but they had a stretch before where they got swept by the Mets and they weren't really playing well. And now the Mets are having that stretch, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Yup, Texas just won the chip 2 years ago. Doesn't matter. They need that hitting coach. Yeah, listen. At the end of the day, you cannot let records blind you of evidence and of what's happening in front of your eyes, because records could easily blind you, but it's the smart teams that don't let you do that. And listen, we know that David Stearns is a very smart general manager and a very smart president of baseball operations. So I hope that he's, seeing the underlying numbers and the fact that the Mets are just not good with runners in scoring position. And I hope that, if this does continue, that there will be a change, at least from the hitting coach perspective. I hope, because, again, I don't think they could win a World Series with Eric Chavez there as the hitting coach. I just don't think they can. Nah, the play. No, yeah. Well, listen, that too. Everything's a balance. Everything is a balance. As the saying goes, you win as a team, you lose as a team. So, yes, like in my opinion, Eric Chavez should be held accountable. In my opinion, he should lose his job. But at the end of the day, these are still major league hitters. They're being paid a lot of money to do their job, and they should be doing better than that. So it's a fine balance, because let's not forget, two things can be true. Two things can be true. They don't have to be independent of one another. I'd rather them lose 5-0 like that than like that annoying Marlins game than teased by. Yeah, but I mean, and listen, I talked about this with Evan. I think it was after the second game of the Diamondback series when we were walking back to the car. In reality, there is no good way to lose a game, because at the end of the day, something had to go wrong for you to lose that game. Because look, if every team was perfect, right, then no one would lose. But listen, whether you lose by 5 runs, whether you lose by 1 run, you'll always look at something to complain at. So I don't think that there is a good way to lose. There just isn't. And for me, look, I'd rather, if I had to choose, lose the close game, because at least then I could say, like, okay, like, we're right there. We just have to make a couple of changes. But like I said, in my opinion, there's no good way to lose a game. Like, you're always going to be mad and pissed off about something. So, but that's just my opinion. That's not the coach's fault. Like I said, it's a balance. Both can be at fault. Acuna hitting better than Vientos right now. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously Acuna didn't have, what's it called? Good ABs in the second game, but in the first game he had very good ABs. Obviously got on base 4 times. Vientos, like I said, it's a thing where he looks good when there's no one on base, and then once guys get on base, once guys are in scoring position, he just looks like a totally different hitter. And listen, that's something he's got to figure out. May McGill, yeah. Mets starting pitcher needs to go more than 5 innings. Absolutely. I fully agree with that. That's something we've been talking about, plenty on the podcast so far throughout the season so far. Pitchers have to start going deeper into games because, listen, the bullpen right now, they're obviously dealing with plenty of injuries. And, you don't want to burn the bullpen out because look what happened last year when the Mets, got to the NLCS. They got to a point where, Diaz was the circle of trust, Stanek was a circle of trust, and then half of Reed Garrett. You don't want to, burn guys out, especially, it's only May 4th. Like, pitchers got to start going deeper. Yikes, that's a bad series. Can we get any worse at a runner's in corner position? Laugh my ass off. I mean, listen, I always say with the Rangers that things couldn't possibly get more wrong, that things possibly couldn't go more wrong, and then they always somehow keep going wrong. So I guess theoretically they can go way worse than that, but I hope things change. I hope things change. Plus, this is our third season in a row with terrible. I mean, yeah. Listen, obviously, I'm not gonna blame the Mets losing this year's on the umpires because they ultimately they cost themselves. But yeah, the umpiring crew, the last three series, and this one, the one in Arizona, they haven't been good. They just haven't. Stop coddling the pitchers. I mean, stop coddling the starters. I mean, again, this is a thing where I agree, but again, you have to look at the situation of where guys are in their starts because obviously, look, if McGill was after the fifth inning, if he was only at 80 pitches and he was cruising along, the Mets would have pushed him to go six, maybe even seven. But you saw McGill was kind of he just didn't have it this game. So obviously they felt like they didn't want to push him. But yeah, overall, Ray, I agree with your point that pitchers have to start going deeper into games. I fully agree with you. They got to beat up on the crappy AL teams. Even the Yankees, in my opinion, are bad. Okay, at best. They're a two-man team of Judge and Fried. I mean, listen, the Yankees are a good team, but obviously, they're going through their struggles right now. And even with the Mets, going back to the point of beating up on bad teams, I mean, again, this is something that we saw last year with this team where, they would go up there against the better teams and, they would go punch for punch for them. They would win those series. And then you'd see some of these series like against the Rockies, against the A's, against, lesser teams like that. And then they'd end up losing those series. But then like last year, like I said, they go play a team like the Baltimore Orioles and again, this is last year's Baltimore Orioles, obviously not this year because this year the Orioles are not doing good. But they go up against a good Orioles team last year, and then they beat them 2 out of 3 in a series. So I don't know. I don't know. This team is just they're inconsistent when they play down to poor competition, but then they play up to better competition. It's frustrating to watch. But overall, that's it for me. We pretty much covered anything. I pretty much went over everything up here on the comments with you guys. But yeah, obviously, like I said, frustrating series loss. Mets gotta start playing better. We'll have the me and Evan will obviously do the podcast series wrap up tomorrow with this series. We'll obviously, vent out our frustrations and then we'll end up previewing the Diamondback series. But overall, guys, that's gonna be it for me. Hope you guys have a good night. And like I said, before we get out of here, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We always want to keep feeding you guys content, and we greatly appreciate you guys supporting the channel. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Peace out. Let's go, Mets.